Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who has helped me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Doug and Jennifer Dawn Robinson. We have featured them individually in the past, but today we feature them as the dynamic duet in which we learn from their individual life experiences and notably their first date, how they have enjoyed each other for 13 years of marriage as of this recording. But their first date was literally a 9-hour telephone call where each of them were just uncertain if they wanted to date or just what their life would be. It resulted in them knowing and trusting in each other despite some of their earlier life experiences. Marty, what are some takeaways we can garner from Doug and Jennifer Dawn?
Ron, our podcasts have been good and fun, but this one was just so enjoyable. I think I was so engrossed, I just kept wanting to hear more and more about how they met. They have, through trauma, past trauma, gotten over that, and have a beautiful relationship. This is a fun podcast to listen to.
Got a great marriage going. It's a source of hope for many who may be having a troubled marriage and not sure if they would even want to date again, but an example of how two people can overcome the past and enjoy a great future. Let's listen and learn together. Doug and Jennifer, it's great to have you back with us. For our listeners who may be listening to Doug and Jennifer for the first time, they each told their individual stories several months ago in a podcast for each of them individually. And I believe our listeners will be very interested in learning Doug and Jennifer as a couple. They each have their own backstories, life experiences, but it's going to be very interesting to learn how the two of them came together and maybe just assimilated, a term I'll use, their respective backgrounds. Doug and Jennifer, it's great to have you with us.
Well, we are so excited to be here. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, folks. Nice to be with you again.
Doug and Jennifer, just whomever, how would you want to start with your combined background? And hey, anywhere is fine.
You want to start with...
I'll yield to my wife.
Awesome. Do you want to hear the story of how we met? Because it's pretty good. It's a pretty good story.
Yes, of course. How did you meet? And how did all that get its, how did your married life get its start?
Yeah, I believe that there was a little bit of divine intervention going on for sure. So a little bit of backstory. So I had been married before, and I was actually going through a horrible divorce. and I had relocated. I'll go back even a little bit further. So was working in corporate at the time. I was going through a terrible divorce, and I'd hired a life coach to help me through all of these really, really hard times that I was going through. And so I ended up leaving corporate. I left, I was in Florida. I left Florida and I went to North Carolina to live for the summer with my sister because she was just like, you need to come here. You need to just lick your wounds and, take a few months, take the summer off. And so that's what I did. And I had left my corporate job and I didn't know what I was going to do for work but it was fine. It was a great summer and I was just hanging with the kids and we were riding horses and swimming in the pool, her kids, my kids, and having a good summer. Then I was like, well, I better start to figure out what I'm going to do for work and money and all of this stuff. And so I went back to the same life coach that I had hired before when I had been in corporate from the year and a half before. And so she was like, hey, yes, I'll help you start to figure out what your new business is going to be. And by the way, you might want to call this guy. So I know him. He's an author. He needs help doing his marketing for his books. And I was like, hey, I'll do some marketing consulting and help him with his books. Okay, fine. And she says, and oh, by the way, he's single. And I'm like, I do not care if he is single. I don't want another man in my life ever again. I am done. Forget it. But I would love a client. I don't need another dude. And so she gave me his number and then proceeded to harass me until I called him. And so the number she gave me was a wrong number. So I ended up calling and it was some weirdo on a voicemail. And I'm like, I called, I did what she told me to do. I'm never calling again. And I left it at that. And so a few days later, it was actually over September, the Labor Day weekend. A few days later, I'm sitting in my kitchen and my phone rings and it's a New York number. I'm in North Carolina at the time. He's in New York. It's a New York number. And for whatever reason, I answered it. These days, I would not be answering it because all my unknown numbers go to voicemail. It's just too much spam. So I went ahead and I answered it. And lo and behold, Doug was on the line. And the same coach had told him she can help you market your books, but didn't tell him I was single. So he just thought, hey, this person can help me market the books. So we start having a nice little conversation. We're hitting it off on the phone. I think that we ended the call. I don't know. We talked for a few minutes and ended the call. And then a couple hours later, he called me back. I'm like, hey, this guy's digging me. And I'm kind of digging him too. And so on the second call, he said, can I take you out on a date? And I'm like, well, how are you going to take me on a date? You're in New York. I'm in North Carolina. And he says, a phone date. We'll have a phone date. I'm like, oh, okay. That sounds wonderful. So we agreed he was going to call me back that night at 9 o'clock. Now I go to bed early. So staying up till 9 o'clock in itself I was really excited to talk to this guy again. So we ended up talking all night long from 9 at night until 6:30 in the morning. And
Oh gosh.
my morning alarm went off because it was time for me to get up and take the kids to school. So I had 3 kids. I was a single mom, like I said. So I had kids. I was going through a divorce, but we had separated quite some time before. And so I had to take the kids to school. So he says, all right, well, we've talked about everything. And we really did. I mean, we talked all night long. He says, we've talked about everything. The only thing left is, will you marry me? And I said, hell yes, I'll marry you. Crazy. This is the part where I said, don't let your children do this. I was like, hell yes, I'll marry you. So we proceeded to have a crazy phone affair for a week because that was all we could do. And we just talked nonstop on the phone. And then he was planning to take a motorcycle trip. And so he was like, I'm taking this motorcycle trip. I'm going to change my course and I'm going to come to North Carolina. I'll meet you face to face for the weekend. And then he was going to continue on his trip. I'm like, okay, very exciting. So he rides his motorcycle down. And it was so crazy because my sister was supposed to watch the kids. And then she found out some strange guy from New York was riding down on a motorcycle and she got very angry with me. And she's like, I'm not watching the kids, and was really mad. And I'm telling him I don't have childcare. He's like, don't worry about it, babe. It'll all be okay. Like, we've been married for 30 years. I'm like, all right, I don't know who this guy is, but I definitely want to meet him. So he rides into my garage and, we don't know. We've had this great chemistry on the phone, but will you have it in person? We really didn't know. But he takes off his helmet and it was just like immediate. We were just gaga for each other. And so he actually ended up, he didn't go on his 2 week motorcycle trip. He stayed with us for 2 weeks. He never left. Then he did have to go home because he had a book reading that he had to do. And so he flew back to New York. He left his motorcycle in my garage, which was pretty serious if he left his motorcycle in my garage. And he goes back for his book reading. He's home in New York for a week. And then he basically just says, I can't live without you. He packs his car and he drives down. And we have been together ever since. So we literally went from two separate people to instant family. I brought all the kids and the animals and the craziness. He brought himself into the madness, but jumped in with both feet. And then a year later, we relocated to New York. And a year after that, we actually made it official and got married for real. And so that was, oh gosh, honey, this year will be 13 years. So that was 13 years ago that all this fun stuff happened. So, and we've been going strong ever since. So did I leave anything out, Doug?
Yeah, there's some other smaller details. For instance, the woman that she had met to be the life coach, she only met her randomly once. She had gone to a women's group, and the woman had started like years earlier, but never attended it any longer. And she just happened to show up the same night Jennifer had showed up, and therefore that's how they met. I met her random, this life coach. I just met her randomly when I would play Words with Friends online. And sometimes you could play with actual friends, or you could just hit like, play with a stranger or whatever. And so that's how she and I met. And you have this little sidebar we can have comments, and she and I had become a little friendlier. And she had said, "Oh, this woman can help with your books." And it was funny. She kept peppering me like, "What do you think about a woman with kids?" And I always felt like, well, why would I marry someone with like kids? Like I'd go have my own kids, Why would I have used kids? But so I'd said that. She never said, "Oh, this woman is single." It didn't even, enter the conversation. But as soon as I spoke with her that first time, I was like, "Oh, something's there." And then I called her back, and it was just off to the races. I was hooked.
So, am I processing correctly? You had what, maybe a 2 week telephone romance before you met each other, and that was kind of the early start.
Well, it was a
Yeah.
1 week telephone
Well,
romance, and then he rode his
I thought it
motorcycle.
was 1 week, but
It
then I
was
thought,
one
well,
week. I know.
no, it's not something you would tell the kids. Yeah, this do this. No, we would shun the children. We'd lock them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
wow. Now, let me ask you about the life coach, Jennifer.
Mhm.
We do life coaching, but I want you to be very honest with me. Does the life coach in for people in your situation, do they necessarily have to have experienced divorce to be an effective life coach, or can a person who has never experienced divorce help a divorced person reestablish their life emotionally?
Yeah, that's actually a really great question. So I had worked, her name was Fran. So I had worked with Fran when it was my own personal life. And because I had met her at the women's group, and then I did hire her to help me with life coaching. And she was incredibly effective at just helping me process grief. I was going through this divorce. I was trying to figure out, getting out of corporate because I didn't really align with the morals and things like that. And so her and I our one-on work was incredibly effective of just helping me sort of figure out my life. Then she's the one who had introduced me to Doug, and you don't normally get a husband out of life coaching, but I did. And so there you go. But once she had introduced me to Doug in the beginning, there were actually some times where we were fighting. And so we brought her back in to help us as a couple with some of the issues that, all couples go through when you first get together. And in that situation, because I had a lot of past trauma, she actually ended up doing a lot of damage. And we had some joint coaching sessions as a couple, and those were not helpful. And I actually was very upset by some of those earlier sessions because she didn't have the background in trauma. And later on, when we moved to New York, we ended up actually, I went to a trauma therapist for 4 years, and Doug supported me through all of that. And he's the one who helped me find her. And because that was deeper, more emotional work that you really do need a lot more training and stuff in. So I answer the question, can a life coach be effective? Absolutely. But there are areas where you do need that additional training. I think trauma is one of those things where you can, if you don't know what you're doing, you can do more harm than good in that space. So I just think you have to kind of be careful, whether you're the coach or the client, into what territory you're going into. And a really good coach generally knows, hey, this is crossing into territory where you probably need a licensed professional, and it's outside of my scope. And a good coach will usually, obviously, say that, like, this is out of scope for me. We need to get you some other help.
Jennifer, you mentioned somewhat in passing, you have very high moral standards. Did I process that somewhat casual comment correctly?
Yes, I do, except when it comes to Doug, and I'm an open book and just like, here, honey, take it all.
Well, I would say probably I'm going to interpret what you just said as Doug met your very high moral standards.
Yes, for sure.
And so, and I have no intention of getting into livid detail, but was the trauma of your divorce related to moral failure?
No. So the trauma actually came from earlier on in my childhood, and I speak very openly about it. And so the father who raised me, so I never knew my biological father. The father who raised me was sexually abusive. And so that really kind of carried into adulthood and really affected my intimate relationships. And so it definitely came into the divorce that I had gone through, but I hadn't healed from a lot of that, and I just didn't know any different. And so when I met Doug, and this was this amazing relationship, and I didn't want it to end in divorce, he was really the one that, in my world, he was worth doing that work on myself for, um, not other people. So, and I did work with a trauma therapist for 4 long years, and those were pretty intense years and lots of intense healing. And he was obviously very supportive through all of that. And now all that stuff is healed. So, but it came from very early on in childhood, carried into my relationships, and then luckily I was able to heal all of that with Doug.
Doug, when on your first 9 hour date, telephone date, did you please, Jennifer, I want to ask the question in this way, but I hope you're not offended. Doug, did you know you were taking on a project?
Well, on the date, no. I mean, it was, I hadn't, it was just me meeting her, spending time with her. So, um, I was so taken by her, like a door opened inside of me, or some information came in that I couldn't put away. I couldn't run from. I couldn't. It was like a tide. You can't fight the tide. And so it was just so swept up in sort of the energy, this attraction, like this person I've met after 40 plus years, um, whoever she is, whatever she is, I'm in. And not to say all of a sudden trying to parent was easy. That was very challenging. All of a sudden, add water, have 3 kids, so to speak. So there were real challenges there because I'd been a bachelor, sure, I dated and whatnot, but I'd never been in that kind of situation. Now there are other people relying on me, not to just to provide, but to provide emotional support, intelligence support, parenting skills, which I didn't really have, so there was some challenges with that. But no, I did not know the project of three
Who's
kids.
who's the project now, Dougie?
Yeah,
It's
no,
so
I'm a project.
it's so
We're all
funny.
projects in different ways.
I love that you asked that question, Ron, because in the beginning it was, hey, Jennifer, you've got to fix these things, because it's coming up in our relationship and we're not going to last if these things don't get resolved. And he was 100% right. I didn't want to hear it. He was very instrumental in getting me in and working with the therapist. As I started doing this work and I started healing, my perspective started to change. And so what happened was then I healed and then I was able to actually see him differently and like, hey babe, like I fixed my stuff. Now you got to go fix your stuff. And it was like the roles kind of shifted. And that's where he had some work to do. So I think that as a couple, nobody's really broken. We all have stuff. And if you're going to commit to the relationship, it means like, hey, we're probably both going to be projects here and we both need to support each other. So I love that question though. No offense taken. I was definitely a project, Ron, and I still am, to be honest.
Okay, now that's very interesting. You would say that, Jennifer. And Doug, I want to ask you a very similar question. But would it be fair to say, Jennifer, you are to some form or fashion still dealing with your early trauma? That do you have trigger points or activation points? I mean, do you have to deal with the past somewhat in that way, or would you say you're totally recovered from that part?
I wouldn't say totally recovered because certain trauma does stay with you forever, but I would say that my trauma is 98% healed through a lot of hard work, many years of diligent hard work, learning the tools. But the biggest thing is that when I get triggered, I can now recognize it and I have the tools to get out of it very quickly. So I would never say, oh, I'll never have another trigger. That's nonsense. But when I was going through the work, I was triggered on a daily basis. I mean, it was pretty intense and pretty deep, and it was awful, really. It was just an awful thing to get triggered and go into these spirals of fight or flight and all of that. So, but I did the work, and it's possible to really heal a lot of this stuff and then learn tools so that when you do get a trigger, you can handle it really effectively. Now I help my clients deal with it as well because I've been through it myself. So yeah, I mean, I could still get triggered, absolutely, but it doesn't happen very often. And when it does, I know how to catch it and deal with it now.
I think the importance of what you just said, Jennifer, and Doug, I want to ask you some a similar question, is you never expunge the past.
Yeah.
It's always there. It's just a matter of what may trigger some of the emotional recollection. Is that an accurate statement, Jennifer?
Yeah, absolutely. I can feel it now. Before, when you get, I got would get triggered, it would just carry me into that emotional state, and I didn't even know what was happening. I was just in this really heightened emotional state. Now I can feel it coming on. I'm like, oh, 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 look at that. I'm getting triggered. I have the awareness, I can notice it, and I can do something about it. So, yeah, but you're not going to ever be able to, especially for deeply traumatic things, just completely rewrite it. But you can certainly heal a lot of it.
Wow.
I'd
Doug,
like
yeah,
to interject if that's okay, Ron.
please do.
So, something I've learned through the relationship with Jennifer is, we're mirrors to each other, and we hold each other to high standards. We expect a lot. I expect a lot from myself in life. She expects a lot from herself. So, but within that, there needs to be a safe space for healing, for being vulnerable, for bringing those raw places forward that maybe we feel shame or we feel the most vulnerable. And that's a scary place, right? To be bringing those type of things forward. But when you do, you build muscles, you build strength, you build resiliency, and this is how you become that person that we all sort of long to be. So, yeah.
Well, it's very interesting you say that, Doug. Did you feel you had developed, you recognized that quote safe space with Jennifer during that first 9 hour conversation?
No, no, that was just getting to know you and, really just who is this remarkable woman and this power um that I felt speaking with her, and that, after seeing her that week or so later, and why I stayed with her for 2 weeks is like, I waited 40 plus years to meet her. I can't live without her.
Okay.
But no, I didn't know obviously what I was getting into. She didn't know me either, other than this, when you meet someone, it's just overwhelming. You don't know all the gooey details. You just know this person's amazing. I want to spend time with him or her.
Well, and I'm going to interpret what you just said, Doug and Jennifer. You were seen to be the same way. Hey, it's worth investing even more into the relationship that's off to a great start. That's what it seems to be. I'm willing to invest in the time and whatever else it takes to get to know each other even better.
Yeah, it's not an intellectual pursuit. It's a feeling, emotions, just, emotions guide our lives. And that's what it was. We just got run over by these emotions or pulled down the street, and there was no saying no to him.
Wow. Now, Jennifer made the comment that the roles have been reversed. And I'm going to take that into context of life coaching. Doug, do you feel at liberty to talk about any of your past, the trauma and so forth?
Yeah, Jennifer's trauma was more overt. It was more obvious, what had happened to her physically, and emotionally. What, her mother not owning up to her mother was aware of what was going on, didn't intervene. So she was really rejected in those ways by the one person that was supposed to take care of her and love her. Um, Luckily, she did have some grandparents that were aware and supportive and loving, and I think that's where she gets some of her light, is from her grandparents, not her parents, or not her stepfather. There's more story about the biological father if there's time later. Regarding who has a hand up?
Oh, I saw
Oh,
I saw that, and we did not
okay.
intentionally do that.
But with me, mine was, so I good parents. I was not physically abused that I'm aware of. There was a lot of neglect, a lot of neglect and sort of shaming, which is a really bad conditioning for a child when you're trying to understand your place in the world, your self-image, all those kind of things. So I had some issues in those areas. Um, and when you're sort of alone or individual, you don't see it as clearly that you're struggling with these issues. When we have emotional beliefs, it just seems like, well, this is what's real, this is true. And that's the trick of beliefs, is they seem true, but they're based on something. They're not fact necessarily. Um, they're not absolutes. They're conditional. And so, yeah, I mean, with Jennifer and also with the kids, kids are a great mirror as well, how they're reacting to you, responding to you. Are you putting your shame on them? And so there was some of that was certainly coming forward, that they would trigger me because they were getting things I did not get as a child. So that part within me was, in a sense, in competition with them. Um, so by Jennifer going through her stuff, then like, okay, the tables turned a bit, and okay, she's up leveling. Okay, well, clearly I have some stuff that is undermining me and or us as well that needs to be addressed.
Did some of your shame manifest itself in you, Doug, wondering what your worth was in life, maybe even to Jennifer and so forth? Am I reading into that maybe correctly? Or if
Yeah,
I'm
I mean,
not,
shame is a dark, low frequency emotion, right? It makes you feel small, makes you want to pull away and hide, makes you question your worth, of course. But where do I belong? I mean, shame makes you really question your very existence of, why am I here? What do I belong? Where do I belong? Is this family? I'm not blood to this family, to these children. So yeah, there are times, or have been times, I've worked through a lot. Jen and I have worked through some of this, of saying, okay, not blood, because my tendency is to pull away. That's that emotional part of the moat around the castle, sort of, like I'm alone. I'm alone. And when you feel alone or isolated, it's a really terrible place. Um, because can I trust love is ultimately what that question is. So there's been a lot of work in that area. There's more work to be done, but definitely improving the solid ground that I stand upon.
You are discussing what I frequently call a life silent disruptor. And what I mean by that, Doug, and it's clearly you and Jennifer have a very cohesive relationship, but there are many of us who would isolate, never say anything to anyone because we are ashamed, and we
Yeah.
certainly would never be vulnerable to discuss it with someone, not knowing if that could be fodder for gossip and so forth. And so and what I'm leading up to, Doug, is that leadership in an organization, it's a culture, is when we develop a sense of trust that we may have employees within our sphere of influence who are very silent, would never say anything, and it affects their work performance in a negative way. It Would you agree, Doug, that an employer, let's say a supervisor, could, if they develop the right relationship with you, you would feel comfortable discussing with maybe that supervisor something similar, not exactly in the same form, but in some way similar to you feeling comfortable with Jennifer? I'm asking that question, Doug, because I do believe we as leaders need to develop a culture where to get the very best um, performance potential from our employees, we need to develop a very trustful, safe space to where the employers feel comfortable discussing. You don't have to if you don't want to, but I would hope you would feel comfortable discussing.
So I'll answer that, but Jennifer will be able to answer that better because she's a business coach with many employees. But for me, I've been in corporate. I actually just left a little while ago, and I had a very nice relationship with my supervisor. And look, in anything, any relationship, it doesn't matter if it's a family or a business, it's all the same because it's all human interaction. Are you treating me with respect? Do I feel safe? Is it, are you being fair regarding my time? Are you supportive? Are do you have constructive criticism or constructive, feedback? We all are looking to simply be acknowledged, to be respected, and hopefully do good work and be acknowledged for our good deeds. So I had a great relationship with my boss. Would I tell him my deepest, darkest secrets? No, that's not appropriate for that. Would I share certain things with him? Of course, I did share many, many things because he wasn't a boss in that he was all about the company. He wasn't a company man. Right? He worked for the company, but that wasn't his identity. His identity was he's a good guy and a caring guy, and that's why we got along so well. He was less a company man, um, and more of just a human being playing a role. So because of that, I was able to stay at that company for as long as I had. If he had been a micromanager, someone who was always pointing the finger and blaming and shaming, I would have been there for 2 months and I would have bit that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Jennifer, very interested in your perspective as a life and business coach. And I'm coming from the perspective of helping create a culture in a company of creating a safe space
Mhm.
where those within your sphere of influence feel comfortable they can, but you're not going to pry into the deep, dark secrets of their life.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that, so as a business coach, I work with mostly business owners. I've worked with some executives for very large companies as well. And one of the things that we are coaching all of our clients on is to create a safe space, but with some limitations and some boundaries, because Yes, we want to create the space so that if the work performance is suffering, that the employee doesn't feel alone, they don't feel isolated, and they feel like they can actually approach the boss. In fact, often in a business, when I'm working with a business owner, if a team member is like all of a sudden their work performance declines, the very first thing I'm going to have that owner do is have a heart to heart. Like, hey, is there something going on? Because it's not like you, we see your work performance declining, what's going on? Like have that kind of a heart to heart. But the boss or the manager is not necessarily the best person qualified to handle whatever might be going on. I have a client right now, and she has a team member, and he's going through a very difficult divorce, and the divorce is not his idea. It's not something he wants to be going through right now, and she's seeing that in his work performance. And so what we've actually done is we've connected. So I coach her as the business owner, and we've connected her person with a coach on my team. So the owner is aware. She's providing resources. She's providing coaching to get him the support he needs in this very difficult thing. But she's not the person to be doing it because she is his boss, and she's just not qualified. And she knows she's not qualified. And so you don't want to, do more harm than good by trying to get in there and, put your opinion on somebody when they're going through something very difficult. She's never been through a divorce, and so she's just not really qualified. And so, but still, creating that environment where an employee feels safe enough to say, "Hey, I'm going through this thing," getting them the support 100%. And there are ways to do it so that it becomes a win for everybody and a very supportive environment. The last thing I want are leaders and bosses trying to provide, a level of support that they're not comfortable doing, they're not trained to do. But there are many ways to make sure that it is provided in a very safe and comfortable space.
If you were working with a CEO, and I'm coming from the perspective that a company culture is, from my perspective, established at the senior level, but if you were working with that CEO who wants to establish a psychologically safe culture, do you help train that CEO to help his or her employees to know what their limitations are? I'm going to use the term limitations, or maybe full up capabilities that, I have care and compassion for you, but there's a better person to work with you who understands what you're going through better than I do. Is that somewhat an accurate summary of how you work with the senior leadership?
Yeah, that is absolutely accurate. And that we do, and we love working with leaders who have that self-awareness and want to create that kind of a culture. But yes, absolutely. Helping them to understand where the limits are, helping establish processes for how you handle these situations. Because if you, as a CEO, have never had to handle a situation like that, you may not know, like, hey, what is the right thing to do here? But yes, that is something we work with our CEOs on, of how to handle it and to create processes around it.
One of the things we emphasize in the context of P words, when the people and processes are in place, the profits will logically follow. For-profit businesses, there are a lot of businesses who focus on the bottom line, the money. And of course, you have to have a positive cash flow. We understand that. But when you first emphasize the people and processes, it is our perspective that the profits will logically follow. Do you adhere to that? And it's fine for you to disagree.
No, we absolutely adhere to that. In fact, my philosophy is if you only have a business that makes money, you have a poor business, because there's so much more that you can do good in this world. That's my personal belief. So yes, of course, the money is important. We want to make money, but in our coaching, we want to coach our business owners on having more than just a business that makes money.
Wow, that is great. And so bringing on the right people, is that a largely a function of values in your past performance in whatever area? Might be a little bit secondary to your values, but I guess what I'm asking you, Jennifer, what do you look at as core principles to bring on the right people?
Well, great question. And so the first thing that we've done, and I encourage others to do, is get clear on your core principles, your core values of like who you are, what you stand for, and what's important to you. And when you have that kind of clarity, then you can bring it into the business in your hiring, your firing, your disciplining, your rewarding, like all these different areas you can bring it into your business. So when we are hiring people, we absolutely, I would say the first thing I'm looking for is the right attitude, the right mindset, the right value, like the right kind of person. Doug, we joke about this. I say that I need my people to be on brand for JDC because there's a certain type of personality. You know, they show up, they get the work done, they make a mistake, they own it, they fix it, they're honest, they're loyal, like some of these great characteristics of the people who work with us. And so they've got to be JDC on brand first. And then the second is going to be, yes, their skill set, their experience. It's not that it's less important, but when we're making a hiring decision, we want the right person first, then the right skill set. I can train the right person to be able to do what I need them to do. So that's kind of the approach that we use when we're hiring.
Oh wow. I am so avidly on target with you, Jennifer, right there.
Jennifer and Doug, I enjoy this, but I want to ask Doug, you know, he married into a family and excuse me, was not used to having a family. So how do you create a relationship with um, Jennifer? How did you create a relationship with Jennifer's children? And hopefully it's all worked out. So there's probably a father or a mother out there that is not the biological person, and they want to know just how they can have a great relationship with their children.
That is a fine question, Marty. I think I was just tried to be myself, was really what it came down. I didn't try to act as if I was their father. I didn't try to, I mean, it's tricky because you're entering their lives too. They're not just entering my life. So, the little one, I'd spoken to her on the phone a few times and we just fell in love with each other. She was 3 at the time. So just sweet and full of love and joy. The boy also, he was a little more reserved and quiet, but he had we played frisbee, so we did things that were fun. The oldest daughter was a teen at that time, so that was more of a challenge because she was more developed and who's this guy kind of uninvited coming into our lives. But so again, challenges, but I think you have to meet people where they are, whoever they are. Is there some magic pill for it? I don't think so. But ultimately, you have to be genuine. Kids will see through you if you're not. But you stumble forward, hopefully.
As you look back, Doug, how long would you say it took for all three to fully accept you?
That's a loaded question, Ron. Um, I think the younger two the youngest one accepted me quickly. The boy fairly quickly as well. The oldest one, we're still working on that. That's still a work in progress, but we're getting better.
No, thank
Getting
you for
better.
that candor, Doug. I appreciate that. I can only suppose each of the five of you may have various forms of resentment and so forth that maybe you have to work through, and that's just one of those things. It takes time, it would seem.
Yeah. Right. You have to build up a trust. You're a stranger being thrust into their lives, and they're already going through emotions and developing and hormones and all that. So, um, and it's hard because there can be a power play, sort of, who's in charge, who's making decisions. Um, and so, no, initially it was certainly a challenge, mostly with the oldest, and I fully understand, and I probably wasn't the greatest version of myself at times either, because, you know, challenging decisions and challenging who I am and why I'm there. And like I said, it's not an easy dynamic to just sort of insert into.
No, and I appreciate your candor. Doug and Jennifer, on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you each for your individual lives, how you've come together. Thank you for your candor of explaining how things were, but the best is yet to come. I frequently use that expression. I do not mean that to be trite at all. I do believe that as we continue to look to the future, the best is yet to come. And as we purpose to work through life encounters together, we will do that, and we can experience the victory on the other side. Doug and Jennifer, you two are experiencing that victory, and we thank you for your candor and the opportunity to enlighten our listening audience. Marty, what do you think?
Well, even after 57 years of marriage, you still have adjustments.
Right, right. Wow. Well, congrats on that, though. That's wonderful.
No, thank you for that. But oh yes, we well, even earlier this morning, I had a little bit of elevated voice pointed at me, and so so yes, we are continuously working through different things to where we just purpose to ultimately have an understanding. But Doug and Jennifer, thank you for your lives, and thank you so much for your candor.
Been such a pleasure, folks.
Thank you.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, Marty, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.